Praise the off-season content gods. We have an update from Ryan Day, and we have a Woody Wednesday on the Podcast Daily with new information to get to. That's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. We got 20-ish minutes with the head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes, Bill, and I loved every second of it.
It was great. It was nice to talk to somebody about Ohio State football for the first time, well, on the record anyway, for the first time since April. Not the most informative press conference we've ever had. I thought maybe there was like two different questions, one that I asked and one that was asked by the offensive line about looking in the transfer portal for potential additions at those positions. And Ryan Day was like, yeah, like we kind of did. There wasn't a whole lot out there. But my biggest takeaway from that was like they felt pretty comfortable about where this roster was coming out of spring ball. I know they made the one addition in the secondary, right, and a couple of preferred walk-ons as well. So they did do some things, but I would take that as a pretty good sign about how things have trended, are trending, that Ohio State did not seem to be uber aggressive in the post-spring portal. But I don't think that was the wrong stance to take either, right? There's questions on the roster for sure, things they have to figure out. But from a personnel standpoint, I thought they were pretty well situated. If there was like a no doubt slam dunk offensive lineman out there, then obviously I would have liked to see them take a run at that. But that guy didn't exist, so they didn't add anybody. But I think you like to hear that they were pleased with the progress of the young players in the offensive line too. I felt good about where they were headed with that position group. So
this all-star team is already loaded up.
That's right, and we know that a buttload is how much?
126 gallons.
126 gallons.
But no, I mean, I think that it's important for Ohio State to stay true to itself, which you can't plaster developed here all over the walls, and then every time you have a second-year player that hasn't hit maybe exactly where you think they're going to be, you move on from them like that. Yeah. I don't think you can do both of those things. So, yeah, if there's a surefire slam dunk starter out there, fine, go get him. But we tried to tell people back in April, like, this is not the time of year to get one, especially because so many people entered the portal in December. You got very lucky with Josh Simmons a year ago. Like, that was not a normal trajectory of things. So, right, again, to me, like, I don't know why there was an expectation that they were going to go get an offensive lineman. If they didn't bring in another one after December when everything was wide open, then that's when, if that wasn't happening then, I didn't think it was going to happen now.
Yeah. Well, I do think that it was, I don't know, it has to be, if it doesn't reassure you, at least it is clear from the head coach and not just from the three of us saying, well, these players in the portal at tackle are not very good. Like, clearly Justin Fry, Chip Kelly, and Ryan Day all concurred with that assessment, and that there was nothing that was going to be better than what they already had. I think that's one conversation, and the other is also that they feel pretty good about Josh Simmons and Josh Fryer with where they are now. They had an opportunity that was available to them where all three of those coaches that I named knew someone who started at UCLA at tackle and said, no, thank you. Mm-hmm. And that person, I think he wound up at Washington. So, they probably were on the right side of history with that decision. And at least they came from a pretty informed perspective. I didn't think about running back that extensively, Bill, but it was certainly on your mind especially in the post-Dallin Hayden world here.
Mostly a numbers thing. It's not a talent thing. Obviously, the top two guys are very good, and I like the freshmen a lot. It's just like, is 4 enough? And they would probably, Ryan Day did not say this, but I'm sure if I went back and asked him, he would probably say they feel like they have 5 if you include TC Caffey. But even then, like, you want more experience. You have 2 players who are awesome and tested, and everyone knows who they are, and then 2 freshmen who have never played, and then a walk-on who I think might have like a carry or 2 in his college career. It's just like a very steep drop-off in experience once you get past Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. And I'd imagine it would be incredibly difficult to sell anybody with experience like coming in to be the third running back. So I'm not surprised that they didn't look at it. I'm not surprised that they didn't add anybody. I'm a little surprised that Ryan Day kind of made it sound like they didn't even consider it. Like, they were just like pretty content with what they had at running back.
Yeah, I think your point there is the more important piece. Like, there's players, if you look at this roster and you ask, okay, what could Ohio State use? A player like Penny Boone, a player like Rashard Amos from Miami of Ohio, who went, I think he committed to 3 different schools in the transfer before
a player like Chip Trainum
before landing at Ole Miss. Like, you could find a big-bodied back to be a goal line type player, and I think that would actually be one of the areas on the roster where you're like, okay, maybe you could use that, but you're not going to convince multiple-year 1,000-yard rushers to come here and be a third down back or a goal line back. Like, this is not fantasy football where you're just having touchdown hawks. You know what I mean? Like these kids want an opportunity to go play in the NFL. So for Rashard Amos to end up at Ole Miss, and Penny Boone, who went from Kentucky to Louisville to, I don't know where he's at now, but
he is somewhere else where he's not the number one running back.
Central Florida, Auburn.
I can't remember. Yeah.
But like, you could have used an opportunity for a player like that. But TC Caffey's pretty good. I mean, and Caleb Downs, who we talked about on Snap Judgments on Tuesday. Like, you have options. But the most important piece of that was what Ryan Day said. I mean, for him to say, well, the quarterbacks are going to take away carries.
Sure.
Is a far cry from what he said months ago, which is the quarterback needs to pass the ball. We might use, we'll probably incorporate the run game a little bit. Now, like, well, they're going to take carries from the running backs. Like,
yeah.
That's
the most direct he's been about that.
Yeah, that feels like he's preparing us for a pretty heavy quarterback run game. Which,
that felt more to me, because you and I talked about it the other day. Like, I think I said like 4, and you said, no, I think it's going to be more than that. The way that Ryan Day said that makes me want to agree with you now that it might be more than the 4 that I had in mind per game.
Yeah, I think it, especially with, that's where I got in my mind. Not that there's going to be a ton of triple option on 1st and 10, and then Will Howard or Devin Brown keeps it. I think we're talking JT Barrett, 3rd and 2, finishing off drives in the red zone, and that can get you to 10 pretty quickly. Yeah. Like, I think that those are going to add up, and I think either one, Ohio State is confident to put both Will Howard and Devin Brown in those rushing situations. And the difference is they could have done that more extensively with Justin Fields and CJ Stroud, one to a lesser extent than the other, but there was no safety net that they felt really good about. So we've seen Devin Brown be inserted to do some of that stuff in specific packages, and Will Howard has done that a lot in his career at Kansas State. So they both have experience doing it. They have the physicality to do it. And Ohio State knows that their season would not necessarily be over if their starting quarterback ran the ball and got hurt.
Yeah. And I think it all ties into another thing Ryan Day said on Tuesday, which is they're still looking for wide receiver depth to play 5 or 6 guys. So, like, if you get into those positions, those 3rd and shorts, and you are only got those 3 receivers, you are eliminating or you're sort of telegraphing to defenses what you're going to do when you have those guys. So he wants players. I mean, I think that's more of a – does that feel more of like a shot or like a wake-up call for the Bryson Rodgers and the Jaden Ballards of the world?
I think it's a talent, yeah. I think
because Brandon Inniss is still not he's still not sprinting after his foot.
Kojo Antwi, too.
Kojo, actually, I was told – we talked about Jeremiah Smith hitting the 23.18 last week. I was told that the day before, Kojo outran him. So, like, Kojo's turning on some – he's at least out here working hard. But, like, someone has to step up into that role because for this offense to not get bogged down, like, Will Howard and Devin Brown are going to have questions about their acumen as passers, I think, all through the year. So it's important that someone else steps up. And I thought for Ryan Day to specifically point that out on Tuesday was, like, he was asked, what are your concerns about the team? And that was one of the 2 things he said. So
yeah, he went through, it was wild to be covering an Ohio State offseason, especially with all the expectations that they have and the way that they've recruited and the coaching staff and everything, all the pieces are in place. And then Ryan Day is going, well, camp opens, got to figure out the quarterback job. Don't know what's going to happen at right guard there, the right side of the offensive line, looking to build depth at wide receiver. Caleb Downs is now an emergency running back. It was like, all right, that's the entire offense. Didn't name the tight ends. We already know that that's one of the priorities as well. And it's like defense is like, well, we need a 5th defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Maybe another 4th safety, see who's going to do that.
It's like he's just calling Chip Kelly to the mat.
It just feels like we're in like bizarre.
It just got flipped on its head, right? Yeah. Like it's not a bad thing. It's just, it hits your ears like in a way. It's like, is this Ryan Day's Ohio State? This defense first team that might want to run the ball a little bit this year and perhaps play a more physical style of football.
Do you guys get as annoyed as I do when people say that Ohio State's an air raid offense, like pass heavy, because they're never really been pass heavy since Ryan. I mean,
who says it?
They've had good balance. Yeah.
Name some names. Who says it?
I'm not gonna. There was a conversation. There was a question in the press conference on Tuesday. Like, in Ryan Day's tenure here, they had the only 2,000-yard rusher in Ohio State history. They had the next year a player who broke the single game record for rushing. The year after that, they had a freshman run for 1,000 yards. Like, I just feel like this idea that they don't run the ball
They just gotten away from it the last couple. Last year was atrocious. They couldn't run the ball well last year.
That was clearly
that was not an Ohio State rushing attack.
Right. Whatever was going on, you had the best passer in school history. So you're
going to lean that way a little bit.
And 5 first-round picks of wide receivers. So I guess I understand throwing the ball a little bit more in the C.J. Stroud era. And last year, the offensive line play and the play calling was an abomination. So where do you go from here? You put Chip on the spot.
Back to the top.
I mean, it was better last year than 2 years ago. That's when it felt like it bottomed out to me.
Oh, that was the health issues 2 years ago.
Sure,
last year.
Yeah. No, I mean, the last 2 years have been quite bad running the football. There's no question about it.
Okay. Have we covered it all? What's left?
I don't know. Is that
talked a little bit about, not very in depth about the linebackers.
Nothing on quarterbacks.
Didn't have anything. Just said that you're going to take the quarterback stuff into camp, which I think we all knew was going to be the case. Did not want to get into the Aaron Dunston situation and talk about that publicly, which I don't think is any kind of surprise. And I think that Bill and I talked about this on Friday, so we've got a ton of questions on it. I feel like this has maybe taken up too much attention for the actual impact, which is, again, I don't mean that as a slight on the people involved. It's just the actual. You tell me if I'm wrong on that.
I don't think you're wrong. I think this is just a situation where the reason Michigan forced her to make a decision when they did is because the only way this really hurts is from a PR perspective and from a potential causing a few hiccups in the recruiting final 2 weekends, which is 90% taken care of. And Erin, to her credit, left pretty good instructions for everyone of where they're at. She's going there to not be in their recruiting department. She's going there to be in football ops. So this idea that she's going to take all of it's just not true. Every program in the country is trying to run the same way. So but it is the opportunity for Sherrone Moore's team to get a poke. And so the media, it's Ohio State, Michigan, you're going to blow it up. But it doesn't mean that much. And it's not something that come September 1st, Ohio State's going to be we just can't. We cannot replace her. She'll be replaced. Everyone. That's the one thing about Ohio State. As someone who's grown up in it and watched it my whole life and consider myself a fan, in the last week, having conversations with people out here who have been directly impacted by her departure, the common thread is we are all replaceable. There is nobody here. Urban Meyer is one of the greatest head football coaches in college football history, and was replaced and didn't really miss a beat.
I think the part that hit
is
for
a
me,
recruiting girl gonna
when I was asked about it the other day, and I think you make a great point about this being a PR effort, victory, attack, however you want to phrase it for Michigan.
Being done.
I challenge you. Do you know, America, who Aaron Dunston replaced at Ohio State? Because I bet 99% of you don't.
I don't even think I know right now.
It's Tory.
Oh, of course, Tory Majors.
Tory Majors. So, that's a position that is not in the spotlight and not one that is going to be irreplaceable. I had never heard of Aaron Dunston before she was hired away from LSU. She did a great job. Tory did a great job before that. There's going to be other people that can do the job, I promise.
Hell, I hope Mark has called Tory and asked her to come back. She's married now. She's got a baby. Life's been great for Tory. It's time for her life to get hard again.
Come back and be miserable.
Come on, Tory.
Okay. We walked up to the line and then we just jumped right past it.
You're not going to think about this in 2 months. It will be brought back up on November 30th when she's here, and there will be a picture of her and Tony Alford together on the sideline, with tears in their eyes or whatever.
It's a heck of a story, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, something. That's the only time you're going to care
Sam
about
Webb will be with them, just the three of them.
Sam Webb will be
the three amigos.
So, that's fine. This is life in the big city. She could have waited 2 weeks, but Michigan would not let her wait 2 weeks because they had to get her to do it now because she's getting married next month and she's going to be off for the whole month of July. So they had to pretty much, get in a shot. They had to get a shiv, poke a hole in it.
Wild card.
Yeah.
All right. I think that about covers it. And if we didn't get to it, guess what? There's 2 more episodes of the Podcast Daily left this week. That's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you later.